Greetings on the channel, friends. Today I will tell the story of Julia, a girl who together with her husband moves from New York to Bucharest. Not knowing the local language, the girl is presented to herself, while her husband is always at work. I am waiting for your opinion about the movie in the comments. Enjoy the movie. At the beginning of the movie we see a young married couple riding in a cab. The wife's name is Julia and she does not understand a word of Romanian, unlike her husband, Francis. When they arrive, the cab driver helps them unload their belongings. The couple look for their new apartment and are escorted to the door by the concierge. Left alone, the husband and wife anticipate a good new life in a new country. Julia can't sleep, and it is pouring rain outside. The young girl goes to the window and begins to look at the neighbors. At this time, the husband wakes up and calms his wife. Julia woke up from a message on her phone, because her husband left early in the morning for work and did not wake her up. During the day, the girl tries to learn Romanian language by audio lessons, and at the same time does household chores. Suddenly she hears some shouting from the neighbors. Julia listens, but all the sounds have subsided. At lunchtime, walking around the city, the girl went to a cafe and makes an order. Fortunately, at least the waiter could understand her. That night Julia doesn't sleep well again. The girl spends all her days studying the city and its sights. In the evening she caught the concierge in her apartment with a man who turned out to be an electrician. Julia opened a bottle of wine and waited for her husband to come to dinner, but he was not there. Going to the window, the girl habitually looked at the neighbors, and it seemed to her that one man was also watching her. Suddenly her husband came in and took Julia for a walk in the evening city. On the street, the couple saw a crowd of people and a police car. Criminal experts were working on the scene, and no one knew exactly what had happened. During the day, Julia suffers from idleness and the news showed a crime story of the very same place. When her husband came into the room, she asked him to translate what was being said. It turned out that a woman's body had been found. Julia complained to her husband that the man from across the street was always looking at her. During the day the neighbor cannot be seen, but at night he is always watching her. In the evening, Francis's work colleague and his wife came to the couple's house. Luckily for Julia, they understood English, and the girl admitted that she had wanted to become an actress before, but it was an unsuccessful experience. During the conversation it also became clear that the woman found yesterday had been decapitated, and it was not the first such incident, and the elusive criminal was called a spider. When everyone started speaking Romanian again, Julia first left the table and then the apartment. In the hallway, a neighbor named Irina, who also spoke English, spoke to her. The neighbor admitted that she often makes noise in the apartment. On the street, Julia saw a newspaper with an article about a victim named Anna. While searching for information on the internet, Julio learned that she was the fourth victim of a strange criminal who likes to watch girls before attacking them. Julia has the feeling that someone is watching her. To distract herself, she decided to visit the movie theater, but suddenly someone sat down behind her. Julia began to feel uneasy. She stood up abruptly and hurried out of the building. A girl went to the supermarket to buy cigarettes, but at the last moment she changed her mind, because she had quit this addiction a long time ago. She went to choose some products, but there was a man standing to her left. The girl did not like the fact that he went in the same direction in which she went. However, she lost sight of him and started to panic. Hiding in the back room, Julia watched the man and then went out the back door. She didn't even eat anything during dinner, and told her husband about the strange incident at the store. Francis was very concerned. The man suggested going to that supermarket and watching the camera footage. At the supermarket, the clerk immediately agreed to provide the video. There was indeed a man on the tape, but it didn't look like he was chasing anyone. Julia took a picture of him. In the evening, she looked at the picture on her phone and couldn't sleep. Francis was increasingly concerned about his wife's condition. Today he has a dinner with clients, so he will come home late. The girl sits near the window and watches the neighbors, because throughout the day she could not find anything to do. The husband was more delayed than she had anticipated. Suddenly there was a knock on the door. Julia was very frightened, but there was an elderly woman at the door. Julia did not understand a word, but Irina explained that the woman was looking for her cat. The neighbor invited Julia to visit her, and she immediately agreed. Irina poured wine and they got to know each other better. A man knocked insistently on the door, but Irina didn't open it, as it was her ex-boyfriend. The girls had fun, and eventually Julia came home drunk. However, paranoia gripped her again and she looked out the window. The girl waved to the unknown man, and he waved back. Finally Francis came in, and in the meantime Julia was smoking sitting on the bed. The girl told what had happened. Francis looked out the window, but saw no one. The wife decided to call the police and told the officer that she believed the same man had been following her at the movie theater and the supermarket. Francis decided to go with the police officer to the man's apartment. The wife was very concerned and decided to text her husband, but he did not respond. When the husband returned, he began to convince Julia that the man was just their neighbor who went to the same supermarket as them. In Francis's opinion, Julia is going crazy because she is always sitting alone in the apartment. In the morning, while Julia showered, Francis left for work. In the afternoon, she went to buy cigarettes and suddenly saw a man who she thought was following her. Julia decided to follow him. Eventually it led her to a strange place, which turned out to be a club stylized as a museum. Here she saw the same man who works here as a janitor. And later she saw Irina, who also works here, but as a dancer. Irina advised Julie to be careful in the area. In the evening Julia was waiting for Francis from work as usual, but suddenly someone jumped on her from behind and put a bag over her head. But it turned out to be just a nightmare. Julia started to listen to the sounds behind the wall, and from there came a scream from her neighbor. Julia started knocking on her door, all the neighbors gathered, and then the concierge opened the door with a spare key. But there was no one in the apartment except the cat. It turned out to be the elderly neighbor's missing cat. Later, the concierge has a fight with Francis because she doesn't want tenants who cause trouble. Francis is sorry he has to work hard, but he has a family to support. When her husband left, Julia called Irina at work and tried to see if anyone had seen her. Her ex-boyfriend knocked on her door, and Julia told him she wasn't at the apartment. She got Irina's number from the guy, called, and the ringtone came from the apartment. That means the cell phone's there. Julia asked the guy for help. He should go with her to that neighbor who was supposedly following her. They took the elevator up. The guy knocked on the very same apartment. There was someone inside, but no one opened the door for the guy. The guy was in a hurry to go to work, but Julia asked him to knock again. It was useless and the guy left. Julia decided to knock herself and an elderly man opened the door for her. Apologizing, the girl was about to leave when suddenly she noticed the janitor from the club on the stairs. At home, Julia could not calm down. Soon a policeman and a man who lives in the building across the street came to see them. It turns out his name is Mr. Weber, and he was unhappy that Julia was bothering him, as well as his elderly father. Mr. Weber was willing to work things out peacefully if Julia wouldn't bother him anymore. Later, Francis informed his wife that the police had caught the spider today. It turned out to be a man working as a plumber who had discovered the body of the latest victim. Francis and Julia attended an event where all of the spouse's work colleagues gathered. Julia tried to keep her cool, but most of the time everyone spoke Romanian. Francis did not suspect that his wife already understood something in Romanian, and the girl did not like one of his stupid jokes. When it was just the two of them, Francis admitted that he was tired of her paranoia. The man returned to the party, and Julia left. When she was riding the subway, she saw Mr. Weber. Julia got nervous, but the train was still not moving, so she moved to another seat. Mr. Weber was suddenly across from her. According to him, the cause of train delays is usually an animal on the tracks. Julia asked directly why he was following her. Mr. Weber replied that he is caring for his seriously ill father and often looks at people to take his mind off of it, but no one had noticed it before. But one day Julia waved at him, and he waved back. Mr. Weber wondered why Julia had started following him. That's why he decided to go to the police. Distraught, Julia got off the subway car. So she was the one who stalked Mr. Weber, not him, her. She couldn't believe what had happened. When Julia got home, she started packing her things into her suitcase, and at the same time music was heard behind the wall. Julia went to check on her acquaintance. In the apartment, she found Irina without her head. From behind, Julia was attacked by Mr. Weber, putting a bag over the girl's head. It turned out that Mr. Weber had been hiding Irina in a closet so the neighbors wouldn't see her. The man badly injured Julie. At this time, Francis returned home and did not find wife, but noticed the suitcase. Julia tried to crawl away, but she quickly ran out of strength. Mr. Weber lay down beside her and Julia soon passed out, with a little girl watching them from the window across the street. Mr. Weber washed his hands, and in the meantime Francis began trying to call his wife. The man heard a ringtone from the neighboring apartment. As he stepped out into the hallway, he saw Mr. Weber. Suddenly someone shot at the man. It turned out to be Julia, who still managed to survive. This is the end of the movie. Thank you all for watching this movie to the end. Give this video a like. Write in the comments what you think about this movie, and see you in new videos.